Hey guys, in today's tutorial we're going to work on Little Daphne from the show Bridgerton on Netflix. I'm so excited to make this. This is what she looks like. So to make this happen, you're going to need some light skinned flesh tone yarn, some blue yarn, some white yarn, and some light brown yarn for her hair. You're also going to need 16mm safety ice, some stuffing. I used a 5mm hook because I used worsted weight yarn, but you're gonna need whatever hook works for you and for your tension. We're also going to need some tapestry needles and some stitch markers. These are the ones that I use. It's gonna try to zoom into my face, but hold on. I feel like a beauty influencer, guys. Nope, it's not happening. Some stitch markers, and then I like using pins to help me put my pieces on before I sew it all together, just to kind of play around. Don't you hate it when you're trying to put something somewhere and it like shifts as you're sewing it on? So the pins really help keep everything in place as you're sewing it on, so there's no shifting or anything. So I think those are the supplies that I used, and yeah, let's get started. All right, let's get started with our Daphne. I'm going to use my 5mm hook, and here's my light flesh toned yarn. And make sure that you're using a hook that you're comfortable with. Now, I am a very tight crocheter, so I can get away with making small amigurumi in a 5.5 or a 5mm, depending on the yarn that I'm using. But if you crochet looser, you may want to go down a couple crochet sizes, or if you're crochet even tighter than I do, you may want to go up a couple of crochet sizes. So it's really up to you, and it's really gonna depend on your yarn. So let's get started. A lot of people like starting with a magic ring. I've never been comfortable with a magic ring. I learned to crochet a couple of years ago, and I've always done a chain 2, and I worked on that very first crochet stitch. If you like the magic ring, you are more than welcome to start your project with the magic ring. So on that first stitch, you're going to single crochet 8. So when you finish that, you're gonna push that tail tight to close off that hole. There we go. Now for round number 2, we're going to do a single crochet increase in every stitch all the way around. This is when you can grab a stitch marker to help you keep track. We will be working on continuous rounds. We won't be joining. So stitch markers really do help keep track of your rounds. So in that first stitch, we're gonna do our increase and put in our stitch marker. There we go. So for round number 3, we're going to follow the sequence of single stitch increase on the next stitch and a single stitch on the stitch after. Single stitch increase, single stitch, single stitch increase, single stitch all the way around, and at the end of this round we should have 24 stitches. Start it. Let's do our single stitch increase, place our stitch marker so we don't get lost, and single stitch on the next stitch, single stitch increase, single stitch. For round number 4, this is where things are going to change a little bit. We are going to be working on a rectangular shape, so the increases are done a little bit differently. We are going to start with a single stitch on that very first stitch and place your stitch marker. Now we're going to single stitch increase in the next 2 stitches. So work up that first increase, and then one more increase, and now we're going to single stitch in the next 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now we're going to single stitch increase in the next 2 stitches. Work up your first increase, and one more. Now we're going to single stitch in the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. Now we're going to single stitch increase in the next 2 stitches. Now single stitch in the next 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we're going to single stitch increase in the next 2 stitches. And then one single stitch in that very last stitch. For round number 5, we're going to single stitch in the first 2 stitches. Place your stitch marker on that very first stitch we made. Next, we're going to do a single stitch increase in the next 2 stitches. Now we're going to single stitch in the next 8 stitches. Do a single stitch increase in the next 2 stitches. Next, single stitch in the next 4 stitches. and single stitch increase in the next 2 stitches. Single stitch in the next 8 stitches. Single stitch increase in the next 2 stitches. And then single stitch in the last 2 stitches.
Those hands and legs can't stop me. I'll just hold on for dear.
For round 6 through 12, we're simply going to single crochet all the way around. So at the end of round 5, you should have 40 stitches. So 6 through 12 are just going to be 40 stitches. I'm actually not going to go ahead and record this part just because it's very repetitive and you probably don't want to see all of that. So I will meet you back in a couple of seconds after I'm done with round 12. Okay, so we're back. I just finished round 12 and we are going to start our decrease rows to finish off the head. So for round 13, we want to start with 2 single crochets. I'm going to place my stitch marker, and now we're going to do 2 single stitch decreases. So let's work that first decrease and then that second decrease. And now we're going to single crochet in the next 8 stitches. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now we're going to single stitch decrease twice. Our first decrease and our second decrease. Now we're going to single crochet in the next 4 stitches. Now single stitch decrease twice. And single stitch in the next 8 stitches. Single stitch decrease twice. And single stitch in the last 2 stitches. Let's start with round number 14. We are going to single stitch on that very first stitch. Place our stitch marker and do 2 single stitch decreases. Single stitch in the next 6 stitches. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit off of camera here. I'm trying a new setup and I didn't realize I was off frame for a lot of it. And now we're gonna work 2 single stitch decreases. That's your first decrease, and then your second decrease. Now single stitch in the next 2 stitches. Do 2 single stitch decreases. And single stitch in the next 6 stitches. Do 2 single stitch decreases. It's your first decrease and second decrease, and finally a single stitch on that last stitch. Pull up your loop really long because we're about to work on the eyes. So let's work on that eye placement. So this is going to work the same way for both left-handed and right-handed people. So when you pull up your loop, I know for you guys, for right-handed people, it's going to just look the opposite because your tail or your end or your loop is going to be on the other side. But it works the same way. We're working from that first stitch of the last round that we worked on. I'm going to use some pins to kind of help you visualize what I'm doing here. So what we're going to do is from that first stitch that we made where the stitch marker is, we're going to count 6 stitches. And that is going to be your halfway point, your center of the face. And yeah, so I'm just going to mark it so I can kind of see. You can do this too. I often do this with the eyes. Sometimes I'm in a hurry and I put my eyes quick and I notice that I put them on wrong. So having the safety, or the, not safety pin, sorry, having the pins there really does help. So from that center point, we're going to count up 4 rounds, and that's going to be the top. And now we're going to count over 4 stitches. And that very top corner is where our eye is going to go. Now we're going to repeat the same for the opposite side. So we're going to go up 4 rounds and over 4 stitches, and that very top corner, I guess technically your work's upside down, so that very bottom corner is going to be where you place your eyes. So now you're gonna go ahead and grab your 16mm eyes. This is my favorite size, I feel like, for this size doll. I buy my eyes on Amazon. And then yeah, we're just gonna go in, put in the eyes, and once your eyes are put, there should be 6 stitches in between both eyes. So next we're gonna work on the nose. I used to do this after I had finished the doll, but I found out that it's just a lot easier to do it now. So grab your tapestry needle and some of your light flesh toned yarn, and let's get started on the nose. I like to place the nose flushed or at the level at the bottom of the eyes, and there's 6 stitches in between, and I'm going to use the center too. So bring in your yarn from the back and make it 2 stitches wide. And like I said, flushed with the bottom of the eye. I'm gonna zoom you in here real quick. So go back through that first stitch with your tapestry needle. And now we're actually literally going back and forth between those two holes, but we're just going to be very careful with how our yarn falls. So go back on that same hole and pull it, but as you're pulling it, make sure that that yarn is staying above that first line that you made. And now go back to that first hole and insert it into that second hole. And now when we're going to pull the yarn, we're going to make sure that the yarn is falling at the bottom of it. So just be very, very careful when you're pulling it, so it places right underneath that first line that we made. And now we're going to go through one more time. So insert on that first hole, put it on that second hole, and we're going to go back right on top of that first line that we made. It kind of gives it a cute little bump, and it's just a little detail. You can make your nails however you want to. I really do think this is personal choice. If you want it a little bit higher or if you want it a little bit lower, you can place it wherever you want. So once you're happy with your nose, you just go ahead and double knot it a couple of times in the back, and yeah, we can get ready for the next step. Alright, so let's insert our hook back into our work and tighten that loop. And for round number 15, we're going to single stitch decrease and then single stitch on the next round all the way around, and we should have a total of 16 stitches at the end. So let's start round number 15, and we're going to do our single stitch decrease first, and then place our stitch marker, and then do a single stitch, and then a single stitch decrease, and a single stitch all the way around. And for round number 16, we're just going to decrease all the way around. So let's start with our first single crochet decrease and place our stitch marker and continue decreasing. At this point, you can pull up your loop and we can start stuffing the head. You know, start stuffing it little by little, massage it, and kind of get it to the shape that you are comfortable with. I try not to overstuff because I don't want it to pull on the stitches too much. And round 17, we're simply going to single stitch in each stitch around. And we should have a total of 8 stitches at the end. I try not to fully stuff the head, and I probably should have said this sooner, because I don't want to accidentally crochet over my stuffing. So push that stuffing down so you're getting clean stitches all the way around, because I know I hate when that happens. When you're crocheting, you stuff, and then some of your stitches will have that stuffing crocheted into them. So I use my finger and push that stuffing down so I don't accidentally crochet over it. For round number 18, we're going to single crochet increase all the way around. So on that first stitch, do your first increase, and then place your stitch marker and continue increasing in each stitch all the way around, and we should have a total of 16 stitches at the end. Next, we'll be working on round 19, and for this round we're going to follow the sequence of a single stitch increase and then a single stitch on the next stitch, and we're going to do that all the way around. So let's start by doing our first single stitch increase and then placing our stitch marker and then doing a single stitch, and we're going to repeat the sequence all the way around. So for round number 20, we're actually going to go ahead and change the color. So if you're watching the show, she really does have the same style dress throughout, and she likes using different shades of blue. I feel like that's her favorite color. So any shade of blue that you like and you prefer would work perfect for this doll.
Those hands and lights can't stop me.
So to start round number 20, I'm actually gonna go ahead and undo that last single stitch that I made, and then I'm gonna redo that last single stitch, but on my pull through yarn I'm actually gonna change the color, and that's how I like to do color changes. So now we can start round number 20. So for round number 20, we're going to do a single stitch increase and a single stitch in the next 2 stitches all the way around. So we can start with our single stitch increase and then a single stitch and a single stitch all the way around. So at this point you can go ahead and cut off your skin toned yarn because we won't be using it, and well, at least for now we won't be using it anymore, so you can go ahead and cut it off. And then for round 21 is actually going to be a little bit different. I wanted her sleeves to have a little bit of a puff, so we're going to have a little bit of a special detail. So start round 21 with a single stitch increase on that very first stitch. And now this is where the stitch changes a little bit. On a regular bobble stitch, you would do a 3 double crochet clustered together, but I think that gave it a little bit of a hard, too much of a puff. It was a little bit too big for how small she is. So I actually, and I'm just calling it a modified because instead of doing 3 double crochets, I'm only going to do 2. So this is how you do this modified bubble stitch. So after our single stitch increase, we're going to do 6 of the modified bubble stitches. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook on that next stitch, pull through 2, yarn over, insert on the same stitch, pull up a loop and pull through 2. And on our regular bubble stitch you would do that one more time, but on this modified version we're just going to go ahead now and pull through all 3 loops. So one more time, we're going to yarn over, insert your hook on the next stitch, pull up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, insert on the same stitch, pull up a loop, pull through 2, and then pull through all 3. And you're going to do this 4 more times. After your 6 modified bubble stitches, we're going to do a single crochet on that very next stitch, a single crochet increase, single crochet in the next 7 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're going to do a single crochet increase on that next stitch, and next we're going to do 6 of the modified bubble stitches again. So now we're working on that opposite sleeve, so we're going to yarn over, insert your hook, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, insert in the same stitch, pull through 2 loops, and then pull through 3 loops. And we're going to do that 5 more times.
I was wrong to say I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause in the story of our life.
So that was 6 modified bubble stitches. So to finish off round number 21, we're going to do a single crochet in that next stitch, a single crochet increase on that next stitch, and single crochet in the last 7 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, I'm off the screen a little bit here. I promise I'll get better with time. And now we're gonna pull off the yarn, because next we're gonna work on some detail work. So for the detail work, as you can see, I'm gonna zoom in my doll a little bit, but I did some kind of trim around her neckline, and I also did this trim a little bit lower around the waistline. But it's a very simple process. It's called a back stitch whip stitch, I believe. It's a very simple detail. I tried making this very simple but as detailed as I could. So it's actually very easy to do, and I found that it's easier to do it while my doll is still open, because it's a lot easier to maneuver those stitches also, so I can tie it off on the inside and not having to worry about that later. Okay, so to start our whipped back stitch, we're going to use our tapestry needle and some of that matching yarn for our blue dress, and I inserted my yarn somewhere in the back. And it's very simple. The first step is to just lay a foundation by doing a back stitch around the whole collarbone area. And it's very simple, very easy. I chose to do it exactly where the blue and the flesh skinned yarn meet. This does leave you a little bit of flesh dots around the collarbone. I tried keeping this just as simple as I could. If you wanna altogether forgo this detailed trim, you can go ahead and just go back to the regular pattern. But if you wanna do it, all you gotta do is just back stitch all the way around. for the second step of the whipped back stitch, I'm gonna zoom you guys a little bit so you guys can get a better look of what I'm doing. So once you go all the way around with your back stitches, we're gonna grab our needle and actually pass it through those loops that we made. We're gonna pass it right under this stitch. Make sure that you're not grabbing any of the yarn underneath. Just use that loop, put your needle through and pull your yarn. And it's very simple. We're gonna do this to every single back loop that we made it. We're just gonna go right under it and pull up our yarn, and go right under the next stitch and pull up our yarn. And it's gonna give us a really nice rope-like trim around those back loops. Not back loops, sorry, those back stitches. And it looks really cute.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is.
So once you're done with your whipped stitches, just bring your yarn inside and do a double knot, and then tuck the rest of your yarn inside your doll for now, because we're gonna do more whipped stitches later on the patterns.
Till my shadow turns to sun rays.
So for round number 22, we are going to start the armholes. So to start out this row, we're going to skip the first 8 stitches. And on that 9th stitch, we're going to do a single crochet. So go ahead and attach your stitch marker. And then single crochet in the next 9 stitches.
Finding life along the way, melodies we haven't played. No, I don't want no rest. Echoing around these walls, fighting to create a song. I don't wanna miss a beat. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun.
Now we're going to work on the next armhole, so skip the next 8 stitches. And on that 9th stitch, do a single crochet. And then single crochet on the last 9 stitches.
And we'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands. And we'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.
For round number 23, we're going to single stitch all the way around, but only using those back loops. So as you can look at your stitches, you have those front loops right there, and then we have the back loops in the back. So we're only going to work on those back loops, and we're going to single stitch all the way around. So we should have 20 stitches. We are not crocheting on those arm holes. We're going to skip those, only on the 20 stitches that we worked on round 22. So once you're finished with round number 23, you'll see that we have this cute little line going right here, and that's created by the exposed front loops that we skipped on round 23, working only on the back loops. So those are the stitches that we're going to use on the whipped back stitch, but I'm just going to go ahead and start working on the next couple of rounds, and we'll come back to the whipped back stitches in a minute. But for round 24 through 26, so 3 rounds total, we're going to do a single stitch in each stitch around on the regular stitches, so both the front loop and the back loop. So I'm actually not going to record this part, and I'll meet you back when I'm done with round 26. So just pull out your leftover yarn from your previous whipped back stitches, and we're going to do the same process, the second step that we did before. So put your needle right underneath those front loops and just pull the yarn. It's pretty much the same step we did before, we just don't have to do the back stitches because we exposed those front loops. So go underneath those front loops and pull your yarn all the way around. So this is what your whip stitches should look like now, and you can just go ahead and tie it off, and on the inside double knot it and cut off any leftover yarn that you may have, and then we can proceed to the next step. So we're going to go ahead and lightly stuff the body. Don't worry about it being perfect because we're going to stuff it more at a later time, but just a light stuffing. And then we're going to start round number 27. So for round number 27, we're going to be working only on those back loops. We're going to start with a single stitch decrease, and then a single stitch in the next 2 back loops. So 1 and 2, and we're going to do this all the way around. So for round number 28, we're actually going to go ahead and work on both the loops. And for this round, we're going to do a single stitch decrease and then a single stitch on the next stitch 5 times. We're going to do it all the way around for a total of 10 stitches at the end. And I accidentally cut my yarn so earlier, so I'm just going to go and rejoin my yarn here. Don't mind my mistakes. I wasn't paying attention to what I cut. So do your decrease and then a single stitch on that next stitch, and yeah, continue that sequence all the way around. So for round number 29, our last round of the body, we're just going to single stitch decrease all the way around for a total of 5 stitches at the end. You know, when you were getting to that last bit of it, I like to sandwich it in a little bit so it's easier to get in those stitches. And I'm sorry, I'm out of frame again. I promise I'm gonna get better at this. But so you just want to slip stitch to that very first stitch fast enough and weave in your needle in and out through every single one of those loops to finish closing off that hole, and then weave in the rest of your yarn. And we're gonna work on the arms next. So we're gonna start on the arms, and this is probably going to be the most confusing part of the pattern and the only part of the pattern that's really going to be different for right-handed and left-handed people. So if you're left-handed, you want to start on the left with your left arm. So if you're looking at the doll, do your left arm. If you're right-handed, you're gonna work on that right arm. So remember, we skipped 8 stitches that one round, so those are the ones we're gonna use for the arm. So we're gonna look at the second stitch in the back, right? So that first skip stitch and that second skip stitch, that's where we're actually going to go ahead and attach our yarn. And then we're going to use the next stitch after that, so technically that first stitch on that side. And then we're going to do a decrease with one of those side stitches that are on the armpit. And then we're gonna do another decrease with another one of those visible loops on the armpit, and we're gonna decrease that with the next usable stitch. So the first one on the other side, or if you think about it, that last one. I know I'm getting so confused. Maybe it'll be easier to see once I start working it, but I want to explain it first. And then we're gonna do just the regular single crochets on those leftover 5 stitches. But using those loops on the armpit is gonna make it to where we don't have any holes in that area, so we wouldn't have to come back and try to sew those closed with extra yarn. Doing those decreases is really, really important in that armpit area. So when we go and do, for right-handed people, it's kind of going to work the same. We're just working on the opposite arm. You want to attach your hook on that second stitch on the back, do a single crochet, and then with the next stitch and an armpit loop, do a decrease, then grab another armpit loop with the next usable stitch and do a decrease. So let's get started, because I'm just gonna keep talking and trying to explain this, and it's easier to show you. So let's attach our flesh yarn and do a single crochet on that second loop in the back, second stitch in the back. And now we're gonna do our decrease. I'm gonna zoom in our camera so you can get a better look at the armpit loops that I'm talking about. But so we're gonna do a single stitch decrease. So insert your hook on that next available stitch, and then if you see, there's like that loop on that armpit. So insert your hook there and pull up some yarn, and then pull through all 3 loops. That's for your decrease. So now looking at that armpit, we're gonna do the same thing. Kind of put it on that side stitch right there. And then insert your hook on that next usable loop. It's that loop, it's one of the skipped stitches from the 8. So go ahead and do the decrease there. Sorry. And then you're going to single crochet in the last 5 stitches.
Was wrong to say I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause in the story of our lives, the best of times through colored glass, time rolls on enough to let me move on past, but every little now and then it creeps on back.
So we're gonna slip stitch to that first stitch, but we're going to pull the white yarn instead, so we can work on the next 2 rounds. So the round 2 and 3 of the arm are just going to be single stitch in each stitch around, just like normal. You should have 8 stitches going all the way around. So next we're going to go ahead and close the arm. So grab your tapestry needle, and then we're going to fold it, we're going to sandwich it flat. And there are 8 stitches total, so we're going to match 1 to 1, and we're going to use only the outside loops to close it. I'm going to try to zoom you guys in a little bit, but I'm still having a hard time with my camera auto-focusing when I get really close. So as you can see, I'm just using those outside loops and just closing them up all the way around, and then you can go ahead and weave in your ends afterwards. So now we can go ahead and actually start stuffing the arm that we just finished through that open whole arm. So I just put the stuffing inside and then push it into that other arm with my crochet hook. And then we can actually go ahead and stuff a little bit of the body, like halfway through, and make sure you don't overstuff it. I made that mistake with my other doll where I overstuffed it, so the bottom became really, really round, and she has a really hard time standing up. So lightly stuff it to where you can still push in the bottom like that, and that will help her stand up really nice. So now we're going to work on the opposite arm that you worked on last time, and it's going to be kind of like the opposite of what we just did. So grab your flesh skin toned yarn and attach to that second stitch from the back, just like we did before. And this time we're going to start with 6 single crochets, or single stitch on that second loop, and then single stitch in the next 5 stitches. And now we're going to use that last stitch on that side and grab that loop on the armpit area to do a decrease, and then grab a loop, another different loop on that armpit area with the last stitch left over and do another single crochet decrease. And just like we did on the other side, you can go ahead and grab your white yarn, and when you do the join, switch your yarn to the white color. And then round 2 and 3 are just going to be like on the other side, where you're going to single stitch in each stitch around and then fasten off, leaving a tail.
No, I don't want to waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays.
So just like we did with the previous hand, we're going to finish stuffing it until, you know, it's nice and shaped. And then we're going to use a tapestry needle and sandwich the hand up and match stitch by stitch using the outside loops to finish closing it off. So next we're going to start with the hair, and you're going to grab your light brown yarn and your 5mm hook. And just like I stated before, you can start with a magic ring or a chain 2 and work on that second chain from the hook, and we're going to single stitch 8.
Through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays, and on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
And then for round number 2 of the hair, we're going to single stitch increase in every single stitch all the way around, and at the end of round 2 we should have 16 stitches.
Fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands, and we'll grow in numbers.
round number 3 of the hair, we're going to do a single stitch increase and then a single stitch on that next stitch all the way around. So let's start with our single stitch increase and then a single stitch on that next stitch, and we're going to do that a total of 8 times for a total of 24 stitches.
Through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll
Now we're gonna slip stitch to that very first stitch, and we are going to start on our curls. So next what you want to do is chain 26. Now that you have your long chain, we're going to start working on the curl. So on that second chain from your hook, you're going to do a half double crochet increase. So 1 and 2. And now you're going to do a half double crochet increase on the next 9 stitches. I'm going to speed this up real quick just so I can explain the stitches to you. So once you do your 10 increases, we are going to half double crochet in the last 15 chains. So once you're done with your curl, we're going to anchor it to that next stitch. So you're going to slit stitch on that stitch after your chain. So we have 24 stitches all the way around, and each curl is going to take up 2 spots. So we should have 12 curls at the very end. So to start your next curl, we're going to slit stitch again to that next stitch. And then you're going to chain 26 again, and then you're going to repeat that process. So each curl should start on a new stitch and end on that next stitch. And then you're going to slit stitch to the next stitch, chain 26, do your curl, slit stitch to the next stitch, and you should have 12 curls total. And I'm not going to record myself doing all the curls because that would make this video even longer than it needs to be. So you can pause the video here, work on your curls, and then we will be working on the bangs next. So once you're done with your hair wig, you can fasten it off, leaving a really long tail, because we're going to use that tail to attach the hair to the doll in quite a few different spots, plus at kind of attaching each hair to each other. So what I'm going to do next is we're going to start the little bangs.
Oh, for dear life. Yeah, I can't give up this feeling that I get when looking down from this high.
So continue with your 5mm hook and your light brown yarn. We're gonna start the bangs, and the bangs are gonna be a total of 7 spikes. So for the first one, we're going to chain 3, slit stitch on that second chain from the hook, and then do a single stitch. Now we're gonna work on the second spike. That one should be a chain 4, slit stitch on that second stitch from the hook, or sorry, chain from the hook, do a single crochet and then a half double crochet on that last chain. For spike number 3, you're gonna chain 5, and then you're gonna slit stitch to that second chain, do a single crochet, a half double crochet, and a double crochet. For spike number 4, you're going to chain 9. Sorry, I know I'm off a little bit off the screen, but yeah, you're gonna chain 9, and on that second chain from the hook, you're going to do a slit stitch, a single stitch on that next chain, a half double crochet on that next chain, and double crochet on the next 2 chains. And then we're gonna do a triple crochet on the next 2 chains. Another triple, and then we're gonna leave that last stitch or chain untouched. So now we're gonna work on your 5th spike, and you're going to chain 7, we're going to slit stitch to that second chain from the hook, we're gonna do a single crochet, a half double crochet, and then a double crochet in the last 3 chains. So there's 1 double crochet, and your second one, and then your 3rd one. Now on your 6th spike, you're going to chain 4. Slit stitch on that second chain from the hook, do a single crochet, and then a half double crochet. And then for our very last spike, we're gonna chain 3, slit stitch on that second chain from your hook, and do a single crochet on that last chain. Now you wanna fasten off and leave a long enough tail to attach the braids to the head. Doesn't have to be super long, but just slightly longer than the braid. Sorry, than the bang. So I highly suggest to watch this part thoroughly, because I'm gonna try to explain it to the best that I can before you try to attach yours. Grab your pins. I highly suggest for you to use your pins. They are lifesavers. 1, it helps you kind of see where everything's gonna go, and 2, as you're sewing pieces on, it's going to keep your work from shifting. I hate it when you attach something and it's like off a little bit. So first I'm gonna start with the bangs, and you're gonna see that I'm gonna play around with them. When you're placing the bangs, make sure that the curl is curling down naturally towards the face. And once I'm happy with where the bangs look, I'm gonna start pinning them down to the head.
I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause in the story of our lives, the best of times through color.
So now we're gonna grab our wing piece. You want your tail to be closest to the bangs on either side. I'm not sure if you're right-handed, your tail might be on the other end, but it's okay. Place the wing top on top, the wing cap on top. The first or the front 4 curls are actually going to be her bun, and those should be right now going over the bangs, so they're kind of covering her face. So you want to flush where the beginning of those curls are with the bangs, and now pin that hair wig on top. So you see those four front curls are flushed with the bangs. So now I'm gonna go ahead and place each curl close to the bang. So that first curl is close to the bang, and then the one right next to each other. We're gonna do 4 on each side. Depending on what yarn you're using, you may have a gap on the back of the hair, and that's totally okay, because those 4 front curls that right now are laying over her head are actually going to become her bun. So whatever gap you may have on the back of your head is going to be fully covered. As you can see, I have a little bit of a gap right there, and that's totally okay. We want to make sure that the sides of the head are fully covered. So once you're happy with the placement of your curls, we're actually gonna start bringing those 4 curls back and pinning them into place. It's as if she was having like a half ponytail. That's kind of the look we're going for. And now those 4 curls, as you can see, are covering that gap that we had in the back. So once you're happy with that initial placement, we're gonna go ahead and start attaching the bangs to the actual head. I'm sorry, I know again, I'm off frame with this one. I promise I'll do better next time. But what I'm doing is I'm just going through and attaching just the bang to the head with my tapestry needle. And as I'm attaching things, I like to start removing pins. So as you're attaching, you can start removing pins from the braid. Sometimes I get nervous with pins, but you definitely need them. I accidentally forgot to start recording this part, but I went ahead and I removed all the pins on the curls, and I'm started attaching the circle to the original circle before the curls to the head. So what I'm doing is every time there is a gap, I'm going from hair to head, and then I'm weaving my needle through a curl, and on that next gap I'm going from hair to head, weave through a curl, and on that gap, as you can see there, I'm weaving in through the curl, and then I'm attaching hair to head. And I'm gonna do that all the way around. And that's how we attach the cap part of the hair into the head. Once we attach that original circle, we're going to go ahead and remove those pins at the top. And now, once again, we're going to want to pin down each individual curl. Make sure that you have 4 in each side and that they're very closely touching each other. Don't worry about the gap because it's going to be covered. But just make sure when you're placing those curls, we got 4 on each side or behind those bangs. And now we're going to work on attaching those together and to the head. So leave those 4 curls up front and let's start working on the individual curls. So what I'm going to do now is pretty much attach each individual curl to each other, and at the same time anchoring into the head. So as you can see, I'm only going from bang to curl, back and forth. and at some point I'm gonna anchor it into the head. You don't have to do this every stitch, maybe every 2 to 3 stitches. So in this one specifically, I'm going from bang to head to curl, and then I'm gonna go back from bang to curl, bang to curl, bang to curl. And then on that very last one, I'm going to anchor it into the head and back through into the curl. Now I'm gonna anchor that specific curl into the actual head. And obviously I'm not gonna anchor every single curl because we went down and now we're gonna go up. So we're gonna do the same process. We're gonna go from curl to curl, curl one to the next curl, and then every 2 to 3 stitches I'm gonna anchor it into the head. And then I'm gonna continue this with the rest of the curls, making sure that I'm anchoring them every couple of stitches into the head. And I know now I'm sounding like a broken record.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands. And we'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.
So we're just going to go up, down, and once we get to the gap, all you have to do is weave your needle in and get as close to the curl as you can. And I'm not going to continue to record this because it's just going to be the same process. We're going to go up, we're going to go down, attaching the curls to each other, and every once in a while anchoring to the head. So now we're going to work on the bun. So you're going to grab those 4 curls that we had at the top and then bringing them back and then pinning them down. I'm going to weave that tail to kind of like the back of the head, and then I'm going to weave or sew all 4 strands together. So I'm just going to pass my needle through those curls, maybe tightening them a little bit and then bringing it back and then attaching it to the head and then removing those pins. And now we're going to look at those curls. Those 2 middle curls are going to form rosettes at the top. So you see I'm putting them right next to each other. I'm curling my curl to look like a flower and then pinning it down and doing the same with the other. So the 2 middle curls are going to be at the top, and then the 2 bottom curls are going to be at the bottom. So here I'm just playing with the roses until they look how I want them to look, making sure that they are covering the gap the way that they're supposed to, and just really playing around till you're happy with the way that they look. Once I'm happy with the way that they look, I'm going to grab my needle and I'm going to make sure that I sew those roses, each individual rose together. So as you can see, it's going to have multiple layers, and I'm going to run my needle up and down a couple of times to form the rose, and then once I'm happy with the rose, I'm going to attach it to the head. And I know, like always, I'm getting a little bit off frame here, but as you can see, I'm just going up and down through the rose a couple of times to make sure that that rose is secured, and then attaching that rose or floret to the head. And then that's going to be your bun. And now you can go through and weave in any ends that you may have, finishing off the hair and all that jazz. Tutorial wise, this is going to be it for me. This rose that I made, I actually got off of a book. So I'm not going to post the pattern because it's not mine, but I will try to find a link for a similar rose. This is called, don't laugh at me, but this is called the Briar rose. I'm probably not saying it right, but I painted my rose with a little bit of a glitter paint. But I'm gonna try to find a tutorial for you guys and post it down below. And that little rosette that I made, I will definitely be posting a tutorial for it, the tutorial that I used. I don't really embroider, so this was something very new for me. She has a lot of lacy details in a lot of her dresses, so I really just wanted to add a little rose. And here I'm just kind of playing around with her hair. In another blue dress outfit that she has all her hair pulled up in curls kind of in the back, making like a really full bun. So that's what I was doing here, just to kind of give you like an alternative hairdo. There's a lot you can do with the curls, because you get two full beautiful curls that you can pull up maybe into a high pony, or you can have it all down. You can all together like maybe skip the bangs and just give her like a very loose wavy hair that comes all the way along the front, but super dynamic. That's just, this is very ugly. Obviously I didn't place the roses perfectly, but just an idea on maybe different updos that you could do. But I'm gonna be done talking. I will try to find a Briar rose tutorial to link down below, and I will definitely put a link for the embroidered rose as well. And again, thank you so much for watching, for hearing me ramble on for over an hour. I really appreciate your support. If by any chance you do decide to make Daphne, please tag me either on Facebook or on Instagram. And if for some reason you get stuck, also reach out. I'll try to help you to the best of my abilities. But yeah, so subscribe and comment down below what you would want to see next week. Now here are some random bloopers for you to enjoy. Welcome to S.Designs. And I'll also leave a link downstairs. Why can't I talk? Hey guys, today we're going to work on little Daphne. This is the base model, and of course everything is making noise right now. I can't talk. My phone's about to die. Okay, get to work. What's up? Hello, world. Why can't I turn this off?